So nothing specific. Remember, you have a homework due at the end of this week, Friday. Email me or come and see me if you have any questions. Okay. So just a quick review of what we've done last time. Obviously, we were talking about load distribution and how stabilizing loads. What are the solutions to help stabilizing load? We talked about stretch wrapping. We saw a video of this. We talked about column stacking versus interlocking, or if you want, cross stacking. Okay. We also discussed the use of tier sheets, and I had this sample going around when you have like high friction tier sheet that displays between layers or tiers on a pallet, helps with the stability. Then we talked about some challenges associated with mixed loads. Okay, when you go from a distribution center to different retail store, when you have different sizes of boxes that can be used, that are used, it has to be matched together on a pallet, so you have potential damage. So then we talked about quickly, one of the things that happens is the use of RPCs, okay, reusable plastic container. This is an example, and that's something I failed to mention last time, is that what I would say of the advantage of these RPCs, obviously you use them, and once you're done using them, is that they're folded, okay? So obviously you still need to store them, but they take a lot less space when they're folded. So there's different methods, okay, different models, different made company that will manufacture them. And the idea that it should be pretty easy to erect, okay, that's one thing, because obviously a lot of these are used with produce, okay, so they want to be, you will have them in the field, okay, and then you have the people in the field, and you just basically erect them like this, okay, and it's quick and can be filled up pretty quickly. So you see some of the characteristics. I don't know, from the side here you see those notches, so these will allow to lock together. That's a nice thing, okay. Either if they're column stacked, they will lock. If they're cross stacked, they will also interlock together. Again, different model. Usually they will be 16 by 24 like this one, okay. So they fit 5 on the standard pallets on the tier. And you'll have different heights, okay. Low height, higher heights. But the thing is, if you go higher than this, you need to have typically what we call leafy vegetables, because if you fill something like this with potato, it's going to be like 100 pounds. So people cannot handle this very easily. So if you are interested, you can play with this at the end of the class. But this is an example of reusable or returnable plastic container. So then we mentioned, okay, so since some people started to use more and more of these containers, okay, and again, we'll see later on, one of the uses, obviously, they stack nicely, but also they provide more rigid if you have humid environment, okay, this is plastic, so it's not a problem. If you use produce, if you have to cool them, they have a lot of openings, vents, okay, to allow air circulation. So they work very good for these. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. But people started to use this. Now, that was the answer from the corrugated industry, was to have those standard corrugated boxes available, which is called the corrugated common footprint, okay? So once you have this, you have those boxes of standard sizes that also match well together, different sizes, but, you know, some of the advantages of them are there. I guess it created some progress, yes.
Oh, you said the footprint word again. Can you explain like what that is? I still don't understand.
What is it?
The corrugated common footprint.
That's what it is. The corrugated common footprints are standard corrugated boxes size.
Oh.
Okay? And they match us together, yeah.
How universally accepted is that? Is everyone using it, or are there still a lot of people who are not?
There's still a lot of people that are not. Yeah, but it's it depends as well the size of the company. How much they they're growing, and if it's more like a mom and pop shop or a big corporation, it depends. But there's a push with this. So that's where we were last time, okay? And the technique, we talk a lot about road transportation. Now we're going to jump to a different mode of air transportation and see how things are handled over there during air shipping, okay? So, as you will see, the pallets we've seen, the skids, okay, the wooden pallets, okay, you'll see some of them in air transport as well, but they're going to be placed inside or on what's called aircraft pallets or containers, okay? So, again, that's what I'm getting to here. Product in containers or on pallet can be either palletized or bulk. And when I say bulk, I mean loose load. So it's going to be just boxes that people will manually placed, okay, within or inside aircraft container or on aircraft pallets. And if you don't know what these are, we're going there very shortly. You'll see this. So to handle these large containers, or what it's called ULDs. Okay, so aircraft containers or pallets, there are called unit load devices. Okay, unit load device or devices, depending. Okay, but ULDs. Okay, so that means a pallet, an aircraft pallet or an aircraft container is a ULD. Okay, so these things are huge, right? And you see them when you travel outside. You're going to have this little train, okay, with a bunch of what's called dollies that they will have pallets or containers on them, and usually they all would have rollers, okay, or conveyors, okay, to allow the movement, okay. So and these things are going to be handled with forklifts or other things of this nature, but a lot of time in this industry is designed where you can move them around on rollers that can be actually just cylinders, so you can push them, or there will be like little spheres of basically bearings where you can rotate them and someone can just push them around to be able to store them and reorganize them and load them onto those little cart dollies. So vibration and shocks, where with air transportation is not that much as in road transportation, okay? As you can imagine, obviously, the shocks may be an issue where you have manual handling. Partially, if you load these containers or load pallets manually, you're going to have boxes that are going to be thrown, okay? Boxes are going to be dropped, and so on. So shocks are more a problem here than vibration themselves, even though there is vibration during air transportation. So let me turn off the lights and we see a little bit better. That projector is really dark. So in here you see a few things I already talked about. First thing I'm going to refer to is you see that floor. First, it's really dirty. Yes. Okay. Air transportation is dirty. Okay. Never cleaned it, and it's always a lot of aluminum. Okay, and you get that aluminum dust, black dust everywhere. Okay. So you see all these little balls. So this is an aircraft pallet. Okay. It allows to be moved, okay, by one or two people pretty easily on these, and you see always those rollers that allow to move it. Sometimes it's manually, or sometimes it's mechanical. You're going to have friction wheels here that will allow you to move it. So, an aircraft pallet is extremely simple. Okay, it's about half an inch thick aluminum sheet. Okay, and they call them. It's kind of funny in the industry, cookie sheets. Okay, because they look like ginormous cookie sheets. Okay, the only difference is on the side, on the perimeter of the pallet. I'll show you a little bit later. You have a system of grooves where you can attach the net. Okay, like this. So this is a load of fresh cut flowers. Okay, these boxes, obviously it says flowers, but these boxes you'll see with two openings on one end to cool the flowers. But this is an example of how fresh produce will be transported. So it's not different than if it's a bunch of crates with car engines or anything like this. Okay, going to be using the same thing, and the net is placed over to try to maintain it. As I mentioned, if you're dealing with fresh produce, you may not want to use plastic to allow respiration, okay, and moisture transfer. So what they do, they put the net and they have those little fastener that they can tie down the net, make it tighter so it doesn't shift too much in place. But that's what they do. So in this case, you see there's no wooden skid or pallet. It's just the aircraft pallet, and some people place flowers boxes directly on top. The height, okay, at which you load a pallet will depend on the type of aircraft, okay, and if it's going on the upper deck or lower deck, okay. So this will be different requirements. So other pictures, you see here a pallet that actually you might not see very well, but the boxes here are on plastic pallets. Okay, it sits on top very high, so this will be on the main deck of the airplane with the picture. So this is terrible. I need to take a few pictures, but this is a top view where you see the net latches. Picture is good here, but it just doesn't show up on there. So this is on the main deck, just to show you how things are handled and how it fits. So this is the main deck of a Boeing 747 fighter airplane. So what you see is obviously you have a lot of height in here, but you have the shape, basically their standard shape that will fit or maximize the space. Obviously you're going to have this rounded part on top of the main deck. And then here you have all these mechanized systems to roll the pallet into place. And all of these red things here, you see a bunch of these on the floor, they are latches that will accommodate different sizes of pallets. We have sometimes large pallets, you have half pallets, it depends, but when they are in place, you latch them, okay, so they don't move, okay? So that's how these works, okay? And a lot of them, if a lot of cargo, you wrap it in plastic like this, that will protect against dust, rain, snow, whatever, but also it may also prevent some theft, okay, if you have something that can be stolen easily through a net, so this might be one more layer you have to go through. My goodness, I swear, this is really dark there, but I see well here, but anyways, on this picture, it's also on an upper deck, but this was actually horses, okay? So you will have live animals with cargo, okay? And if you have horses, obviously you're going to have large animals, you're going to have a veterinarian on board that will have access during the flight to check on the horses and so on.
Is that a requirement? Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, if you ship, this is from that was from Dubai to the US, so those people who ship I don't know,
they can afford
$1 million yeah. horses, they want to make sure they make it, so they will have people on board that will check. Other pictures, obviously. This is just another cargo, but there's a lot of shifting, so things are a little bit complicated sometimes as well. Damage occurs. So in here what you see is that this is a characteristic of air shipment, is that volume is very limited in a way, okay? So you want to maximize it, okay? So even if you can, as you'll see later, you can have as many little stickers that say this side up or fragile or whatever it is. If flipping a box on its side would allow you to maximize the height, they will do it, okay? And again, the box, you see, I don't know if you can see, but they're on the side, so basically this is the top two panels. So if you have a stress there, the panels just want to open. It's not designed to be supported that way, but it's going to happen, okay? Sometimes, okay, I don't know why, but this is in Miami, okay? And these were fresh cut flower wrapped in plastic in Miami in August. So this didn't make it, I'm sure. Or I don't know what happened. But obviously, clear plastic. It's used in greenhouses. you all experience in Florida the condition in your car during the summer. The temperature inside gets even higher than outside because, infrared radiation, that heat, gets trapped in there. So it's absorbed by your seat and everything and cannot escape. So the same thing happens if you have clear plastic. So, so it's challenging. And there's a lot of variability here as well. You can have black plastic, which is not necessarily better because I don't know, obviously, what was inside there. That could be just clothes or whatever, but it gets really hot when it's sitting on the tongue. So these things, that's what I call the dollies. We've seen that word a little bit. So those little train-like devices that you can attach together is what's called a dolly, and the thing that pulls them is a tug. Actually, this is like the name of the company. If you go next time you're at the airport, you look at these things, you will see those little tractors that look super fun to drive. At the front, they will say Tug, T-U-G. It's like the brand, but they call them tugs. And you have those dollies. And again, you see how they interlock as well, same thing as in the airplane. So you will have a series of rollers. So you'll go in the loading area, and you basically have these pallets that are going to be rolled onto those dollies and then secured, and then they go around. So different types of cover. Plastic cover is used a lot. And sometimes, as we've seen, here you don't have to flick back up, no covers, So the issue that was basically happening with fresh produce, and that's something we worked on here at the university, was the fact that so with the cover, you have like a lot of moisture that accumulates inside, so the box weakens and the product cannot expire, so that's bad. Without a cover, then you have the boxes that are exposed to the environment, and also if you're dealing with fresh produce, you have a lot of moisture, right? It's mostly water. And we already discussed this. One of the conditions during air transportation in altitude inside the plane is you have very dry conditions, So produce loses a lot of moisture, and it's not good for them, So one of the things we worked on here was to develop a blanket, or a cover that was basically protect against rain and so on, allow gas transmission, and also was very efficient to protect against solar radiation, because if you are outside on the tarmac, and you have solar radiation, the temperature on the surface of the load will increase sometimes 20 to 30 degrees Celsius above the air temperature because of how it absorbs the solar radiation. So these blankets, basically were very good at reflecting solar radiation, and not absorbing it and maintaining pretty close to air temperature. So this is, as you'll see as well, there's other, I'll talk about it now, but there's insulated blankets that can be used as well. So if you have a cold load, what they will do is that they will take them before being unloaded, and they'll take that big, just picture like a ginormous, winter coat that they'll put around the pallet on the containers. So typically the loads are not going to be shipped with this, so they will have the people putting it on, and then when the load is ready to be unloaded, they will remove it. So people don't like to do that, but they still do it. The problem is the following, is that those blankets were either very dark in color sometimes, which is, the color is blue, so they want to have blue blanket, but it gets really hot, And if it's pale color, it gets so dirty because they're reused, right? So people just put them there. So when they're dark, even if you have insulation, what happens is that the surface temperature gets so hot, and even if you have insulation, you don't gain much compared to like a very thin blanket that is reflective or that does not absorb energy. Does it make sense? the insulation basically loses its advantage because it gets a higher surface temperature. So yes.
You said it can it's the air can pass through the blanket.
Yeah.
And stuff? Okay.
Yeah. So it's Tyvek. I'll bring some samples, but it's a plastic material that is non-woven, but it has a lot of pores, so it's used in a lot of industry. But it actually allows some moisture transport, okay? A lot of gas transmission. So actually, one of the use of, there's different types, obviously, okay? But one of the uses for house wrapping, okay, to control moisture exchange. But it's used as well in the medical device industry to basically allow sterilization. Gas, basically you'll have ethylene oxide that can go through, okay, sterilize the product, and bacteria won't be allowed to go through the material. So stuff like this, there's a lot of application. And you've seen people with some kind of hazmat suits, okay? So a lot of these suits are Tyvek as well. And you also have something that you may have interacted more with is those indestructible FedEx envelopes that looks like paper. But you try to tear it, it's plastic, okay? So they are made of Tyvek. So this is to show you a little test, okay, that was done. So you see, just to focus here, so black stretch wrapping, this is the temperature, the surface temperature. So that could be, let's say the air temperature here was ambient here, is about 30. So you have about 20 degrees above the ambient air on the surface temperature because of the solar radiation. So the Tyvek blanket we use, okay, made them just a little bit very close to the ambient air temperature. So obviously you do not provide cooling, okay, but you really protect against solar radiation. And the other thing, okay, that is also, there's so many layers, in a way to think about, is that, let's say you have like insulation, okay, the thing is if it can actually act against it, because against what you want to achieve is maintain cold temperature by the following way. So if your load is abused by temperature, let's say it gets warm, okay, and then you have all that insulation. If you have it in cold storage after this, the insulation prevents cooling in a way, okay? So there's a lot of tricky parts about this. And I have a little video here to show you.
Waste.
Okay, so
Food
let me.
security is the food between post-harvest. 1/3 of the food between post-harvest and consumer is wasted.
Food security is the biggest issue which exists. We have to guarantee the customers that they get products which have been maintained and conditioned in the best possible way.
The air cargo industry knows very well that their weak spot is the time in transit and not the tarmac.
Carlos Airlines has a worldwide network serving 90 to 100 destinations. When DuPont presents Tyvek cover sheets, it was for us making a step forward to a more modern material.
It's very strong, tough, difficult to tear. On the other side, it has water vapor or gases escape.
Obviously, temperature control is the name of the game in fresh food. Imagine a pallet standing 3 hours in the sun. That's why we use Tyvek of DuPont.
At Newest, food safety is our ultimate goal. We basically provide food for big companies. We have noticed a significant improvement in quality. Food wastage for the past 5 years was between 10 and 15%, and we're now down to between 3 to 5%.
You see the product, you feel it, and that inspires you to create something out of it. Every chef likes to work with freshness, with quality.
Today happens to be the 55th Independence Anniversary celebration for Ghana, and as a Ghanaian, we're very happy. We're putting together a small party, especially for the employees.
Okay. So give you an idea, Cargolux is one of the leader in the air transport industry because they are really big into cold chain, meaning that they have probably one of the company with the most phases on temperature control. So their planes will have multi temperature control, so they will have cargo compartment to adjust to different needs of the different loads. So they're doing a really good job. And one thing we can notice in that video is that they don't know how to use that mask very well. So one of the idea about solution for aircraft pallets. So this was really focused on aircraft pallets. So what you see is that aircraft pallet is just a thick aluminum sheets, referred to as cookie sheets. You stabilize the load with those cargo nets, okay? And usually under that cargo nets, you will have some kind of plastic or covers, okay? For produce, you have different options. Usually you don't use any, or you can have some new materials that are coming more and more to try to provide better condition. Now, from aircraft pallet, you have aircraft containers, okay? And there's different types. As you can figure out here, some are lower deck container, and some are main deck or upper deck container. And you see the shape. So obviously on the lower deck, it's going to take the bottom half of the circle, and the upper deck, you're going to have the other one. You can have full containers. That means that will take the entire cross section, okay? Or you can have half of them, okay? It depends on the sizes and what you're shipping, and so on. These are typically made, okay? They're very light, obviously, because you want to have light material as possible, so the load is what's going to be the weight. So you have an aluminum structure, and the wall of the panels can be made of different material depending on the manufacturer. Some of them are very thin aluminum walls, so you can think about less than a millimeter, okay? Something like this. Or you can have clear plastic, like polycarbonate. You can have, some are just canvas. You can have some that are fiberglass, okay? Or sometimes it's a combination of polycarbonate and aluminum. It depends, okay? But these containers are the same. They can be used with, as you will see, I have pictures with produce, with your luggage, with meat, with whatever, okay? So that's what they are used. And inside of them, you can have, again, loose boxes that are placed, so you can have pallets, okay, that are placed in there. It depends. The regular containers without insulation or without anything that is used is about, so one of the type that is used most of the time is what's called LD3. It looks something like this, okay, but this one is a special one, is refrigerated, but it looks something like this. LD, when you have the type of container, LD stands for, what do you think?
Low something?
Lower deck, okay, so that means it's one that goes at the bottom. So without anything special, so that, imagine that box that is about 5 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet, like a big cube, okay? About 160 pounds, okay? And you can have about 160 square cubic feet in there, okay? So these are used a lot. Insulated containers, they're not very effective and they're not very used, okay? They're not effective because they get damaged, okay? Sometimes people have to place insulation in there, so it's not very fun to do. It's not used for that reason as well. And the thing is, if the load gets hot, the insulated container prevents any cooling, right? If you have cold storage or anything like this. So, yes.
Why does it matter which one goes on the lower deck or the top deck of a plane? Is it for weight?
It's because of the geometry of the plane. So, let's see. So let's picture. Let's say this is the plane cross section, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the bottom, you're gonna have a shape like this. So the lower container are gonna have that shape, okay, to maximize the volume.
Oh.
Or on the top, they're gonna be rounded on the other side. So that's why it matters. Pallets, it doesn't matter. Obviously, they're the same pallet. It's just that the way they build the load, they will try to maximize the available volume. So I told you that one thing that kind of stimulated change and progress in temperature control in the air transport industry was shipment of pharmaceuticals. So, and because one of the improvement that happened is actually the use and the development of new type of refrigerated aircraft containers. So it all started with the use of dry ice, which is solid carbon dioxide, okay? So CO2. So it is still in use today, okay? So these guys, what they have is pretty simple, okay? Is actually, if I read earlier, they're still powered with 16 D batteries, okay? So what you'll have a box where you can shovel dry ice in there, okay? Either block, okay, or pellets, depending on the shape you have. And you have a little fan, okay, and a temperature sensor. And if it needs cooling, the fan starts working and it circulates the air around your load, okay? Let me ask you this, okay? Can you come up with a potential issue with a container like this where you use dry? There's many issues that can happen. But what do you think could be a problem that happens? If you have a load that needs to be temperature controlled, let's say since it's for pharma, usually with pharma, one of the ranges 2 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius, okay? So what could be an issue happening if you use a container with dry ice for temperature control? That's just it. There's just a little fan, dry ice, and the temperature sensor. Yes?
It's just a fixed amount of dry ice. Unless you take some in, take some out, or put some in, you're just kind of stuck with whatever.
You're right. That's one of the problems. Very good.
Pressure buildup.
Temperature buildup.
Pressure.
Yeah. So they thought about this, but it can be dangerous. Okay, because I'll talk about it later. Yes.
Does the CO2 leave the container?
Yes, it will have to.
Then it might like damage other stuff in there, like
it might
animals or something.
You're right. Actually, you can have pilots passing out. It happened if there's too much dry ice on the plane. Yes.
I was gonna. He answered my question. I thought it was like CO2 would have built up.
Yeah, obviously that's the first thing they thought about. that will be a big problem. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
It could get like a lot colder than expected.
Very good. Okay. There's no heating system. Okay. And sometimes people really want to do the right thing, right? So they see a container and say, "Oh, it's a refrigerated container. It needs to be cold. We'll put it in the cold room." Guess what? If you do that, you freeze everything in there because it's designed to be at ambient temperature a lot of the time, okay? So, and how much, so the container itself, as you see, is first heavier, okay, than a regular container because there's insulation, and it has to be more rigid and so on, and there's less cargo space in there. So that's one of the issues. What was I going to say? So how much dry ice can you put? It depends. So like a container like a Hoche, that looks like the next picture here. I think you can put up, if I read, about 300 pounds of dry ice. But you can put up to 600 pounds in larger containers. That's a lot of dry ice, okay? So, yeah. So that's one thing. Do you have a question? Okay, good. So dry ice containers. So from there, so people started to okay, let's think about something else. Now you have other container that use a battery power refrigeration system. Some of them actually have compressors and heating system as well to really control the temperature. So you don't have just cooling, but you have cooling and heating, which could be essential in some cases. So these are a lot heavier, okay, and a lot tinier cargo space. So that's one reason when you have pharma, okay, that work well, because sometimes you'll have like a little box that could be worth a lot of money, okay, but it's worth it if you have something like this, okay. So the other thing as well as people are, if you ship like very expensive things, you don't want to have everything in one big box because if something goes bad, you lose a lot in one shot, okay. So you have refrigeration system that would use like traditional compressor and so on. You also have system that can be plugged in, and what they will work on, they will have a battery as well, but I think some of them use a thermoelectric system. okay? And they have also phase change material like gel packs, okay, and good insulation, so they will allow to survive the journey. But as you mentioned, sometimes the issue is that how long does this last, okay? Some of these, they have these things that they can be plugged in, okay? But but really used mainly for pharmaceutical, very little for produce, unless maybe you're shipping a load of truffles or something very expensive, okay? I mean, not chocolate truffle. They might be chocolate truffle. Yeah. The truffle mushroom. So they are heavier in a smaller loading capacity. Logistic problem in some locations. So that's the other thing, is that was an issue initially, because since they were not really used, what happened is that you pay to rent one of these containers, because you don't want to buy one. It's going to be thousands of dollars. So you rent one. And then the thing is, the people who use them, they were in charge of renting them, shipping your load, and they were in charge of returning the container. So that's a hassle, okay? So now more and more there's like a widespread network where you don't have to return them. There are different hubs where they are cleaned, and hopefully maintenance is done, so you don't have to do that. So that was a big thing at the beginning, that people didn't want to do that. And the cost varies $200 to $1,800 per day, depending on the location and so on. But they look something like this, the newer one. So Envirotainer is one of the company. There's many different companies now on the market, but these were actually the first people who came up with refrigerated containers for the air transport industry. So they look something like this. So this is an example of how these containers are loaded. Okay, you'll have the dollies, and people will come here and they will be pushed on conveyors like this. And some of these actually you don't see very well, but they sometimes stretch wrap the container themselves to, again, try to avoid people being curious and going and getting stuff from these containers. Okay, so one of the things, and once they're loaded inside, you see there's very little gap. Okay, maybe like 1 or 2 inches. Okay, between the ceiling and the container themselves. So very little gap in there. Okay. So inside containers, all our things stacked. So they are packed to the maximum, whatever it takes, okay, to fill them up. So that means putting things sideways. And the thing is, you don't want to know what happens here, okay, because this is not designed for rectangular boxes. So things get crushed in those parts, okay. And this says toxic. Okay, so. Yeah, so boxes will be packed in various ways. This is an example of fresh green beans. And think about these boxes here. There's going to be some green bean puree at some point, okay? But, that's manual labor, okay? They load as much as possible. As long as they respect the weight and all the volume is used, that's what's going to be done, okay? So fresh produce are loaded in there. And the next strip, it can be your luggage. That's why your luggage sometimes gets so dirty, okay? You can have like a bunch of juices and things like this. It's gross. It's so gross. And the problem is they never clean these things, okay? Never. And they probably don't want to do any sweat tests because there's probably so many things growing in there. So this is show you you can use like corners in there to help you stack, but you lose spaces, so people don't use that. So air transportation is challenging for these different reasons, okay? And you may have some problems because of this. So handling technique now for marine containers. So marine containers, quite different, okay? You've seen already some videos when we look for, they were talking about slip sheets instead of pallets. You saw a product are loaded in those containers. And then those things are handled with big forklift, trucks, cranes, and so on. So shocks and vibration, you may have some when it's loaded and handled in the shipyard, but other than this on the ship, it's not going to be all the stuff happening. The main two types of loading you'll see, okay, these are kind of funny acronyms, okay. On the top part, RO means rolled on, rolled off, okay. And LOLO means lift on, lift off, okay. Two different ways to loading those ships, okay. And inside you can have loose loads or bulk loads like this inside the containers, or you can have pallets or slip sheets or different things. But again, this is not really different. And then those containers can be also multimodal, meaning they can be shipped and then the container itself is going to be put on a trailer and go on rail or go on the road and so on. Yes?
Do you always do Lolo and then Roro? Like to put it on top of the thing and then you might have to move it around?
No, it's either one or the other. Typically, they will have different system within the ship to...
what do you consider lift off? Or lift on, lift off?
So you see that crane here?
Yeah.
So they will have a crane that will put the container on the ship or off the ship. So that's it for handling technique. Okay. The next part here, what we're going to talk about is ventilation system in these containers. And why is ventilation important? Why do we talk about this? We mentioned that temperature can be a very important parameter. Obviously, with fresh produce, yes. Electronics will also sometimes require temperature controls. Without good ventilation or without knowing ventilation, how it works, without good ventilation, you cannot have good temperature control. That's the point. So, what I want to show you is how these ventilation system works for these different modes of transportation. So, we start again with road transportation, and what we are dealing with is what's called a top air delivery system. Okay, it uses also what's called T-beam or duct board floor. Okay, and you need vents in your box for fresh produce. This criteria is really for fresh produce. You need opening about 3 to 5% of the surface of your box to allow air movement. Okay, so what does that mean? Top air delivery and duct board or T-beam floor. So in refrigerated trailers, you'll have at the front here, you have your refrigeration unit. So you'll have the coil, okay, and fans. So the air is cooled down here, and it's delivered from the top. Okay, that's what's happening. And then it's recirculated around the product or through the product through the floor. So, obviously, if you're shipping a load of delicious ice cream, okay, or meat products, frozen meat or fresh meat or something like this, obviously, dead meat, okay, or ice cream they're not alive, okay, they do not consume oxygen or release CO2, they don't have metabolism, they don't generate heat, okay. So if the load is at the right temperature, the only thing you have to do is blanket it by air the right temperature and you will maintain the temperature, right? Okay. So in that case, you don't need to have vents going through the load or anything like this. As long as you have good air movement around, that's sufficient. Now the thing is different with fresh produce because they will generate heat, okay? If you have a large load and you don't have air circulation within, in the center of that load, it will get hot, okay? Because they generate heat due to their metabolic activity, like us, okay? So in those cases, that's where you need to have vents, okay? That will go vertically, like this, to allow the air to go from the top and circulate down to your product and return to the floor. So the floor of these things look something like this, okay? These are what's called T-beam floor. So obviously we look a little bit from the top, but if you were to look parallel to the floor, what it will look like, okay, is a bunch, okay, of T's like this, okay? Okay, so the air circulates through those gaps, okay, and returns to the refrigerating units, okay? and you can roll on this with forklifts or whatever it is, okay? But that's the type of flooring you will see in those trailers to allow air circulation. So a lot of stuff. We're gonna stop here for today, okay? Thank you for your attention and your presence today. If you arrive a little bit late, the attention sheet went around. It should be over there. Yep, you can leave it there and sign it on your way.